Okay, so I have my perspectives on promiscuous women. I tend to caution men from dating promiscuous women or formerly promiscuous women, especially if you're looking for a long-term relationship. And I get a lot of flack, I think, from both men and women on this perspective. Now, women tend to get upset because they think that I'm like slut-shaming women. Like, oh, so what? It's fine for men to sleep around as much as they want, but if a woman does it, suddenly it's a problem. And look, I've already made videos. I'm not a fan of male promiscuity, but also I think that the double standard is somewhat rational, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, so women don't like me, but I've also more recently come into a lot of opposition from guys who, especially like pickup artist guys, like the guys who are engaged in a lot of casual sex, because they get really offended at the suggestion that the women that they're cleaning up with are not high quality women, because, you know, they're using these women as a way to boost their ego. You know, they'll say to me like, oh, I've slept with 20 women this year, or I've slept with over 100 women in my lifetime, as though I'm meant to be impressed by that number, you know, despite. Whereas my perspective is that actually, if you want, you can sleep with heaps of women if you just lower your standards enough. And the kind of women who are engaged in casual sex and who are promiscuous are not the kind of women that you should be proud of sleeping with, but they really, really resent that. So I get a lot of flack from both men and women on this perspective. And so I wanted to test myself. So what I've charged Matt with doing is coming up with a bunch of arguments against my proposition. You know, all the possible arguments against why promiscuous women are not low quality. He's going to come at me, and then I'm going to try and defend myself. Have you got your arguments ready, Matt?
I've got them, and they range from, I think, reasonable and well thought out to below the belt and look out.
Okay, well, I look forward to hearing those. But first, what I want to do is I just want to explain my perspective, right? Like, why do I say promiscuous women are low quality? And there's 3 reasons for that. So the first reason, it has to do with self-esteem, okay? So everybody needs to feel good about themselves. And from my perspective, the correct basis for a self-esteem has to do with moral character, achievements, creativity, kindness, intelligence, you know, what kind of a person you are. That feels good about yourself, and it's largely intrinsic. For women, they have the capacity to feel good about themselves based on the number of people that desire you. And so if they go into a club and they notice that like 50 guys are hitting on them, wanting to sleep with them, that's a really easy way to get a self-esteem boost. And so from my perspective, I think that women who are indulging that cheap, easy means to get self-esteem are low quality, because often they're resorting to that because they actually aren't impressive enough people to be able to attain those higher levels of achievement and base their self-esteem off something more substantive. So that's my first reason. My second reason has to do simply with practicalities. And so let me just bring up a couple of graphs that we've got here. Matt, sorry you're not able to see these at the moment.
No problem. I know which graphs you're talking about.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. So this is from the Institute of Family Studies. And so from a practical perspective, the more promiscuous a woman has been in the past, then the less likely she is going to be able to pair bond in the future. As you can see here, the relationship between sexual history and marital satisfaction. And so these are the number of partners that men and women have had before they got married. And you can see that marital satisfaction is a lot higher if you haven't slept with lots of people beforehand. And also, look at this one. This is the chances of divorce after 5 years of marriage. And so if you married the first person that you slept with, then it's way increased your capacity to pair bond, and you're not as likely to split up in the future, which is why this figure is very low. But the more partners that you have, the more likelihood that you're going to have a divorce. And so for a woman who hasn't had a lot of partners, the first time that she sleeps with her man, it's going to be like, wow, this is a new special experience. I haven't given myself to somebody in this way before. I really feel a loyalty, a bonding there. And that's great. It means they're not constantly looking for other options. But the last one that I want to talk about, and this has a few different aspects to it, is evolution, okay? You know I'm always going to talk about some evolutionary biology and some psychology. So let's get into it. So women, from my perspective, not my perspective, I'm just quoting the science as far as it's been established by evolutionary psychology, they have strong instincts guarding against promiscuity. And it makes sense, right? Because the consequences for sex for a woman are massive. She gets pregnant. That can be dangerous. Pregnancy is hard on a woman's body. Not to mention childbirth is dangerous. Not to mention when you are raising an infant and a child, then a teenager, you have to take care of their needs. It's difficult for you to meet your own needs. And so it makes sense that a woman is going to be extremely reluctant to engage in sex with a man unless she's certain that he's going to stick around and provide for those children. Otherwise, she's going to be left high and dry, and it's going to be a threat to her life. And so naturally, over countless generations, evolution put this instinct in women saying, hey, I need to be careful about who has sex with me. I can't just get pregnant by anybody. If I'm going to have sex and get pregnant and have children, I better make sure that it's with a guy who I can depend upon. Right? And so my feeling is that feminine instinct exists inside all women, but some women, they either ignore that instinct or they don't feel that instinct. They're just so caught up in cultural propaganda or trauma that they've retreated entirely into the cognitive, and rationally they're like, sex feels good, I'll just have sex with whoever I want. But that just means that they're out of touch with their true biology. So it's indicative of just how far they've gone from their true nature. So that's my perspective. And I think that if you break the dating market down into those simple terms of, well, women are the gatekeepers of sex, men are the gatekeepers of relationships, then it makes sense to judge promiscuous women as lower quality, because what they're really doing is trading access to sex for no commitment, right? Like, they're just like, yeah, I'll have sex with anybody. I don't demand that high of a price. And I wouldn't feel comfortable like calling a woman high quality like that when she basically has no standards. How are you possibly meant to feel special sleeping with a woman like you're amazing and she's chosen you because you're better than all the other guys when she slept with 3 other guys this week? You're not special, in that instance. She'll sleep with anybody. And so it's like, right, she's got that low quality. And the last thing that I'll mention is that women sometimes have to revert to this cuckolding strategy. So a little bit more of the evolution stuff is that ideally, every woman wants a guy who's really impressive. He's got the great genes. The children are going to be healthy and attractive and all of that stuff. But he's also going to stick around and help raise them. But it's very difficult. There's not that many guys like that. The higher a quality a man is in genes, actually, the more likely he is to just be sleeping around because he can kind of get away with it. He's going to go with the other sexual strategy for men. So what women who are low quality end up resorting to is that if they can't find a guy who meets both the good genes aspect of her sexual strategy and the I need a guy to provide for me sexual strategy, then she splits them. She sleeps with one guy with the good genes, she has his children, and then she convinces Mr. Chump provider guy to raise those kids. Sometimes by being honest with him, often by cuckolding him and convincing him that the child is his. And this is one of the theories behind why women developed this capacity for concealed ovulation. You don't know when a woman is actually fertile because it assists them in deceiving men as to the paternity of men, of the fatherhood. And so I say this seems reasonably non-controversial to me that based on those evolutionary instincts that women have guarding against promiscuity, if you have women who just seem to have no standards of who they sleep with, it's fine to judge them as less ideal as long-term partners. In shorthand, lower quality. But that's my perspective, and this is why I've brought in Matt, because I'm totally happy to hear any criticisms, and I also want to make this very clear. I'm open to changing my mind on this one if I hear an argument good enough. So let's go through this journey together. Let's see what he can come up with. He's rubbing his hands with glee. Matt, please tell me why I'm wrong.
Well, first thing I'll say is if you're wondering why this seems uncontroversial and yet people are clearly outraged about this claim, welcome to 2022. This is things that seem uncontroversial are in fact the most controversial that you could possibly say, and I'll let everyone populate that in their own imagination. My first argument is a very good faith argument, which is who gives you the right, Alexander, to police women's bodies?
It's such a frustratingly vague line. Okay, so
that's why it works so well.
Okay, me having an opinion about your choices is not policing your bodies. Like, words are not violence, right? Like, I'm not strapping you down, making you do anything. You have every right to live your life the way that you want, and I have every right to comment on it. And you can't claim that my opinions are somehow violence or restricting in any actual physical way. So there's no policing of your bodies going on. I could just as easily turn this back on you and say, who are you to police my mind? Let's just not even go down that route.
Yeah, well, fair enough. And I'm glad that's a good response. First of all, before I even go further, it was an excellent argument you made, by the way. Incredibly compelling and well-rounded, and I love it. But I'm supposed to be disagreeing, so let's see what I got.
Oh, I should make this clear to the people watching. Yeah. Matt doesn't necessarily believe any of the things that he's saying here. I've tasked him specifically with being the the
I'll
opposing
tell y'all
counsel.
my opinion. Y'all hear my opinion at the end. I'll say what it is because I'm sure you really want to know. That's why you're here. So, Alexander, isn't this coming from insecurity? Isn't this a very convenient belief for men to hold if they don't have a lot of sexual experience and they feel insecure around women who do? Isn't this an easy thing for them to grab onto to kind of reassert some moral superiority when it's really just coming from this feeling of sexual inadequacy?
I've seen like nice guy posts like this, like guys begging for sex, and then as soon as they get rejected, they're like, well, you're just a slut and a whore. It's like, wow, that escalated quickly.
That changed quickly, yeah.
I think that there is some validity to that one for regards to men. I don't think it applies to me because I've turned down sex more than I've had like a number of sexual partners, and so I'm not I'm not jealous, you know, I'm not like trying to get in a lot, but I can imagine that would be highly applicable to some guys who are just upset that women are sleeping around, but not with them. And they know that women are sensitive about like sexual partners and slut shaming and things like that. And so they just kind of go to that because they feel bad and they want women to feel bad. But here's what I'd say is that you can't point to that minority or even majority of men. You can't point to that argument and then use that to dismiss everything else that I've said. So the fact that some people would make this point in bad faith does not in and of itself cancel out the good faith arguments that I've made. So I think we need to keep going. I'm not convinced yet.
Yeah, I agree. It is a sort of ad hominem, and so we won't go there. Here's one that I think is maybe a little bit more reasonable. Aren't women better off getting lots of experience with many relationship partners so that they can, you know, get good at being in relationships? It's kind of, think of if you go to a massage therapist who says, you know, oh, I've ever had 2 clients ever. You know, my clients are very special to me. I've only had 2, but I can give you a great massage. As opposed to someone said, oh, I've had thousands of clients. I've seen people of all different body types, all different ages. I know exactly how to take care of you. Why is that not preferable for sex and for relationships? Wouldn't they make better partners if they've had more experience?
I think that if you're looking for a one-night stand and you just want to have a good experience for sex for a woman, actually that has a lot of merit, that's quite valid, because you don't really care what she's done beforehand. You just want her to be able to perform and pleasure you in a really optimum way. But we're talking about long-term partners. And so I won't, like, I'm saying promiscuous women are low quality or less than ideal when you're auditioning for your long-term partner. And yes, there might be some merit to she's been in like lots of relationships before, but you can't falsely equate relationship experience with just casual sex. I'm only speaking about promiscuous women. And if you're looking for your forever partner, while it might be better for the first couple of months, if she's had heaps of guys in the past, she's heaps of experience, you're like, wow, this is fantastic. She knows how to pleasure me so well. I'm going to guess in the long term, it's actually better for your pair bonding experience to go through a number of those experiences together. You know, like if the first time you ever tried this sexual act, or you do this, you do that, and it's something that you both try for the first time together, it's a bonding experience. You know, it's something that cements you to that person. It's not going to be fantastic for generating that loyalty if you come into a relationship as a virgin and as the woman's been with 100 guys and you're like, oh, I'm so excited to, you know, try this thing with you. And she's like, oh, yeah, I've done that plenty of times. Yeah, I'll show you how to do it. You're like, oh, great, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh, I wish I could just comment on ways in which I agree, but I'm supposed to be arguing with you. So
You'll save it for the end. I'd like to hear, but let's keep rolling through them.
Well, there's not going to be a whole lot to add because I tend to agree with you on stuff. But for the sake of the devil's advocate, so is this not a naturalistic fallacy in which you're saying that because something is natural, therefore it's good and preferable? These instincts stem from our ancient past when pregnancy was likely if you're having regular sex, and that raising a child alone was maybe not a death sentence, but damn difficult, right? Whereas now, pregnancy is easy to avoid if you're, you know, using any kind of methods at all, and you're being a little bit conscientious about it. And raising a child alone is actually not nearly as difficult as it used to be. And some women, some single mothers, as we've been told, are just as good of parents as any pair. And so, why are we still holding on to these ancient instincts that don't apply to the modern world?
Okay, yeah, that's a good argument. I still disagree, and let me explain why. Is because I would judge a woman as being lower quality if we existed way back in like caveman times. So let's say just arbitrarily, if you can see my finger, this is how low quality I think current promiscuous women are. But way back in caveman times, I would think even lower quality. And so culture, some sexual liberation, feminism, birth control, all of that are mitigating factors, absolutely. And that's why my judgment isn't as harsh as it used to be. You know what I mean? And so I think that my perspective has been adjusted to take into account that. The fact that there has been progress, though, in my mind, doesn't mean that judgment for quality should be completely annihilated, as though the instinct isn't relevant at all, because just the fact that we are influenced by social and cultural mores and norms now, that doesn't mean that our biology is a completely irrelevant factor in this equation anymore. Those instincts that guarded against promiscuity, while they mattered a huge amount back in caveman times, they're still relevant today. It's still important that women guard their virtue, protect their reputation, don't get pregnant. And so I think, as well as my point earlier about being just in touch with your feminine instincts is indicative of quality, I still think that women should be taking into account what their biology is telling them, because it's not working against their best interests. But your own biology, your own instincts, maybe in some cases, but in this case, it's not out to harm you. It's not out to do something bad for you. It's protecting you in an instance, because you don't want to be a single mother. You don't want to be sleeping with a bunch of guys and then having none of them commit to you. You're going to feel bad about yourself. It's not going to be good for your self-esteem. So women on the whole need to spend, in my opinion, less time listening to whatever the social, cultural attitudes of the time are, and a little bit more time listening to their deep wisdom of their ancient instincts. That's my thoughts.
Those are good thoughts. I liked all of them. Here's another argument that I think I might get you on this one. Let's see what you think. It sounds like what you're suggesting is that promiscuity is a heuristic for low quality, correct? And
what is a heuristic? Sorry,
a heuristic is like a rule of thumb, like a reliable rule. But like any rule of thumb, there are exceptions, right? So let's say that a woman is. So what do we mean by low quality? You know, by low quality, we mean she's got low self-esteem, she's deceitful, she can't communicate well, she sabotages relationships, things, she doesn't take good care of herself, she's codependent. These are low quality traits, right? I think we can agree on that. Now, if you're saying that promiscuity is a heuristic for these traits, what if you meet a woman who is clearly high quality in the sense that she's well connected with good friends, she's got high self-esteem based off of legitimate sources, she's very honest, she's a great communicator, she's just, she's an all-around pretty awesome lady, but she is also promiscuous. But she doesn't seem to have these correlating negative features of being low quality, being bad for long-term trust and stability in a relationship. Then at that point, does promiscuity not become irrelevant, given that she has the other good qualities that you're actually worried about?
I mean, in practical terms, if she stops being promiscuous and is just monogamous with you from then on out, is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, assuming you have a monogamous relationship, then that would be part of being high quality, is that she's faithful and she could just turn off the instinct that she doesn't want to use anymore. The same way that a man does, Okay. Like imagine a man who's coming in hyper promiscuous and then he says, okay, I'm going to be monogamous now. That's an attractive trait for a woman that pursues a man that can have many options, but chooses not to for her.
This is the best argument so far, I think.
Nailed it.
Well done. I think it'll be interesting to read the comment section to see what other people think about this one, but I actually do find that quite
Don't read the
convincing.
Comments,
I think that the reason why promiscuity is like a red flag is because it often indicates a bunch of other troubling qualities. And if none of those are present, then you would kind of be foolish to just arbitrarily just punish a woman or punish yourself by making it like a big deal out of it. And so, I mean, I would personally doubt the existence of the kind of woman that you just spoke about, but I will say that I have met formerly promiscuous women in my personal life who don't seem to have, like, I wouldn't in any way impugn their quality based on what they've done in the past. In lots of instances, it seems to have, improved their quality. They're in monogamous, happy relationships, 20, 30 years, great children. They learned important experiences from that, and it did develop who they are. You wouldn't say that they are proud of what they've done, but there's also not a regret. There's an acceptance of that's where I was. Women who in particular, not to get too dark, but who had unwanted, sexual contact as like a child from, established authority figures and things like that. Promiscuity can often be a way of them kind of experimenting to try and overcome that trauma. And it's tragic. you'd be a real jerk if you were to hold that against a woman if it was part of a healing journey that she ultimately kind of overcome. So there's no point punishing somebody for their past. And so in that sense, I guess you have got me a little bit, because then promiscuity is not actually the determining factor as to whether or not somebody is low quality. It's all of the typical corresponding traits. So if you meet a woman, you probably do need to do your investigative work, treat it as like a yellow flag. Like, okay, this is not a deal breaker. Let me ask some questions, do some follow-up, find out what's really going on. Why was she like that way? Is she still that way? How does she feel about it? And if you're not finding any problems there, then yeah, let it go, if you can.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. Something we should have done is defined promiscuous, because if a man has had 20 partners and a woman has only had 5, he might deem her as non-promiscuous. Whereas if a man has had 2 partners and a woman has had 5, that he'll feel an imbalance there that's relevant. And so it is going to be a bit dependent on your personal experience. Otherwise, if a man says, 10 is promiscuous, but anything less than 10 is fine, the difference between 9 and 10 is I mean, it is a whole body, but it seems a little bit silly.
See, I don't at all place that kind of importance on numbers, so they wouldn't be factored into my definition from promiscuity. What matters to me is the context with which you're sleeping with somebody. And so if you are sleeping with men outside of any kind of committed relationship, then I'll be judging you to be promiscuous. Whereas if you've had 10 partners, but you're 30 years old and you had 10 relationships that each lasted a year and tragic circumstances broke them up, I'm not going to count you as promiscuous. Whereas if you're 21 and you've slept with 10 guys in the last year, none of them were your boyfriends, it's the same number, but one's promiscuous and one's not, if you get my point.
Yeah. Single number doesn't tell you all the information you want, because you can rack up numbers all at once. Well, all at once. Well, maybe all at once, depending on the kind of videos you watch.
We'll leave that to populate people's mind, that image.
That's called podcast number 3. Anyway, you said it better than I was going to, so I'm going to not try.
Do you have any more arguments for me? Or is
I have
the
one
best
more.
one? Okay, there's more?
I have one more, and it's actually a direct argument from you. It's a quote from a video of yours that did some research, because I'm a good devil's advocate. Quote from Alex. I won't do your accent, even though I desperately want to. It would be the height of foolishness to reject a genuinely high-quality woman who is amazing in every way, except for the fact that she has a colorful past. Quotation's mine. Maybe her experiences in the past have caused her to become the awesome person that she is today.
I think that's actually the same one that we covered in the last one. So yeah.
Yep, you're right.
Yep.
Yes, you're right. That was you, and you're right.
That's my perspective. I don't feel like I do have the same perspective anymore. That one about the heuristic, which is a new word that I've learned, that's actually changed my mind a little bit, I think.
You hear that, everyone? Ladies, I just gave you a little bit of a bump in Alexander Grace's mind if you've got a promiscuous past. So you can send me your love letters. Not too many, though.
Here's what I'd say is that better than changing my mind, you've better put into my mind what I actually feel, because that quote that you just read out for me, that's how I truly feel. And so I guess me saying promiscuous women are low quality is a lazy way of trying to say it usually indicates low quality, but I might actually adjust my language. I think that's actually kind of important. I really do feel like my mind has been changed on this. It's a little bit too original sin-ish to just sort of say, because you've done this once, or you used to be this person, you're low quality and things like that. So I think from now on, you catch me out, audience. If you see me in my videos, let me know in the comment section. From now on, I want to say promiscuity usually indicates low quality, not promiscuous women are low quality. So thank you for that.